And then I would like to welcome our next speaker in this session, Dr. Alejandra Palermo. Ale is the head of global inclusion at the Royal Society of Chemistry and a highly experienced and also engaged leader in all topics relating to inclusion, diversity, and also international development. And she will be sharing some of her experiences as to what works best in inclusion schemes and also where we stand today. Thanks, Ale.
Thank you very much. And it's really great. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here celebrating something, such an important thing as today this university is inspiring for many, for me at least. I want to talk during my talk about what the Royal Society of Chemistry has been doing in terms of inclusion and diversity, with a particular focus on gender, how we learn from the challenges and what we can do to break the barriers for gender parity. So I will start by our inclusion and diversity strategy, which we set up 5 years ago. And this guides our way of approaching inclusion and diversity. What we know is that chemistry should be for everyone. This is what we all think, but it isn't. Today, it isn't. So we put a very significant strategy forward, which actually help us to achieve our goals. So in a nutshell, the strategy says is we want to increase the diversity of people choosing to enter into chemistry and be retained to fulfill their maximum potential within chemistry. And for that, in a nutshell, what the strategy is, it has 3 main pillars. The first pillar is about taking an approach which is based on data and evidence, so that we have a way to that all our initiatives, our actions, as Frank has mentioned, are based on data and evidence. And with that, we can develop guidelines to enable data gathering and analysis and look and efforts to move forward. And we also can influence others about how we go about inclusion and diversity. The second pillar is about focusing on underrepresented groups in chemistry, for the attraction of those groups and for the retention of those groups within chemistry. And the third one, because chemistry is, as we heard very much today, is an international enterprise. So we really need to work with others. We can't work in isolation. So work with other universities, other countries, other chemical societies, governments, and so forth, advocates for change. And in the strategy, the main question that you may want to ask is, what are the underrepresented groups in chemistry? And actually, women at senior levels continues to be a very significant issue. Minoritized ethnic groups within chemistry, and we are talking in particular about the progression and retention, and we're talking about Black and ethnic minority groups within chemistry. LGBT plus individual, and in particular, I will talk about non-binary individuals and transgender people. And I'm not sure if you are aware of what's going on in the UK about this issue about gender recognition. Diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, and in particular, thinking about those with lower socioeconomic background and the attraction into chemistry and the retention into chemistry, into a career in chemistry. And of course, disabled people at all levels within chemistry. And from each one of those groups, with this strategy, we wanted to do something to change the status quo. And we are analyzing our strategy for 2030. So we are looking into the new strategy and what were the changes and where we are today with the strategy. But let me tell you a little bit about why this strategy is important and how we started to look at the landscape of the chemical sciences. And this piece of research analyzed all the data and evidence that we have at that time in 2018, looking at the landscape, of the diversity landscape in the chemical sciences. And we identified many issues, mental health issues, the issues about exclusionary for LGBT plus individuals, socioeconomic background, and you can mention many other different areas. But the most important area was the gender inequalities, the gender parity. And we showcase here the data for, this is the Higher Education Statistical Agency in the UK, which actually shows the data of all undergraduates and the academic career within in the UK. And as we compare chemistry with physics, even though chemistry has around, at that time, that's represented in 2018, around 50% undergraduates enter into chemistry, at each one step of the academic ladder, we are missing and losing talented women. And that picture in chemistry, in academia, is very similar in industry. It's representative. This is the correct data because we have access to the higher education data, but we know that in industry happens something extremely similar. And we compare with physics. Chemistry is much worse than physics. The loss of talent is much more high. We start with undergraduates, which are around in physics, around 20 to 30, 25% undergraduates, female undergraduates with respect to men. But we reach more or less a senior level around 9 to 10% in 2018. And engineer is the same. It's better than chemistry. Chemistry is one of those disciplines that we are losing a huge amount of talent. And I presented this to the head of chemistry departments in the UK. And they were shocked because everyone said, why RSC is still talking about women? We have been doing so many things about women and gender parity for the last 20 years. We're just done with that. We have the Athena Swarm, we have lots of different initiatives. We are moved ahead, but that is undeniable. That's why data and evidence is key to make change, and to drive change. So when we learned about this, we're trying to understand, we have the data, but what is the evidence? Why is it that we are losing all these talented women somewhere they go out? So we start a new piece of research looking at evidence, which it means is a survey. We look at subject groups. We look at workshops. We have focus groups with different types of groups of people and ask questions. And we look at the social analysis of those questions. And how do you understand what's happening? And we identify 3 main barriers for the retention and progression in academia for women. The first one is that academic funding structures that actually can create uncertainty and unnecessary pressure within the environment. And we are talking about here in particular about the short-term contracts that we have as an employment, particularly early stages of your career, and then you start dropping from the academic ladder, but also the short funding mechanisms that exist, that insist that you have to continue ask and fight for funding to continue your research. Some people give up. The pressure that today exists about what it means to excel in an academic career. They publish or perish. They have to travel, you have to go to a conference, you have to have a presence, you have to have a big, large group in order to reach the potential as seniority. The academic culture that can drive talented chemists elsewhere, and in particular here we talk about the inconsistent management that exists in the university. And the leadership, they are excellent leaders. Are they good managers as well? Are they always good managers? Some could be. We have a great example here, but not everyone could be. Low accountability and transparency in promotions is particularly clear in academia. The allocation of workloads, and not all the workloads within an academic environment have a significant impact on the leadership. For instance, teaching, mentoring, they are lower in terms of the progression to senior positions. A culture that perhaps doesn't address bullying and harassment as it should. And I will get back to that. And a balancing responsibilities at each stage of the career path. And in particular here, we're talking about the care and responsibilities that everyone has. Children, parents, family issues. And of course, any one of those barriers affect any gender. Men, women, any gender. But more than anything, affects women more than men. So since then, one of the unexpected consequences of this piece of research was the incidence of bullying and harassment within the community. And we launched a video talking about what actually means bullying and harassment, because sometimes there is a misconception of what bullying and harassment is. And so that video has been used very extensively within the STEM community, and that's a link to the video which is available on our website, and we use it to share with anyone who works within our community. And it clearly states we believe that bullying and harassment exists. And this is through a survey that actually was an international survey. This is not UK, this is an international, using the capacity that we have with the 60,000 members across the world to contact with them. But also, we launched a support line about bullying and harassment. Anyone across the world can access this free support and talk to someone about it in confidence. And since then, since we launched this report, Breaking the Barriers, we had many different initiatives which were all evidence-driven interventions. And in particular, I wanted to mention the grants for carers. We talk about the care and responsibilities. We launched a grant that actually anyone in the world, any chemist, could apply to £1,200 a year to support their care and responsibilities when they have to attend a conference or a professional development activity or so forth. But we're working with the community is essential. So we launched as well the Inclusion and Diversity Fund, which provides any individual who can apply across the world, has an idea to actually make the community more inclusive, the chemistry community more inclusive, has an idea, puts a proposal together, and gets funding up to £5,000 to develop that within their communities. And this is international, not only in gender, it could be in any area. And Frank just talked about implicit bias, and I really like what you said, because one of the things that we noticed through this work in Breaking the Barriers, it was that people talk about unconscious bias. I can't do anything about it. Unconsciously, I am biased. I can't change, because it's unconscious. I can't help it, but it isn't. It's implicit. When we know it is an implicit bias, stop and think, and you can change. And so that's what we created, another video which is used for anyone who is going to be part of our community in terms of being on a board or being in a subject community or trustee, has training about implicit bias. We know as well that, and I mentioned that the importance of publishing within a progression at the senior level. And so we started a piece of research trying to understand whether publishing was biased in terms of gender. And we did an analysis of, across 5 years, of all our journals and all the submissions of all the manuscripts to our journals, and looking at associating to the names of the individuals applying to submitting a paper, analyzing whether the women and men. We use a statistical analysis, very much common, and Elsevier has used something similar to us as well. And we identified these main results. So there is quite a lot about this report, and they are all mentioned here, the reports. You can see them on the website again. But some of the key points was we identified that around 36% of our community, publishing community, research community in chemical science, across all areas, they are women. That women are less likely to submit their manuscripts to high-impact journals. So they start already from lower impact journals. That women publish fewer research papers compared to men. That there are fewer female reviewers compared to the pool of reviewers, and to compare the 36% researchers existing in that our publishing business. And that papers are written by women are less cited by women and by men. So it's not, they both act in the same way. So with that, we said, first of all, we set targets. All our activities, all our events should have at least 36% women. Otherwise, the RSC should not be putting the logo into that. We try to do that. It's complicated, but that's our target. But also, we develop a tool for us to actually increase the inclusion and diversity within publishing. And we published that framework, that tool that we used, and we share with other publishers. And since 2019, when we launched the tool, to today, 2025, we have 56 publishers working together in a joint commitment to increase inclusion and diversity in publishing. And that's incredible because we have all publishers, commercial, non-commercial publishers in chemistry and in all different areas in STEM and social sciences working together using the same way to collect data on gender and on race and ethnicity, started with those two areas. We use the same so we can compare how we are doing about gender and about race and ethnicity in terms of integration and inclusivity in our research output. So this is going to change, I believe. We are seeing the point of the iceberg. This is going to change the research culture at all levels, not only in chemistry, in the future. I want to give an example, and we talk about organic chemistry in particular, an example of positive actions. We know that the organic chemistry community, in general terms, is one of the sub-disciplines within chemistry that has more women studying a PhD, more women professors, assistant professors. However, when the president of the organic chemistry community started her term in 2016, she noticed that only 5% of the nominations for the organic chemistry prizes, the RSC organic chemistry portfolio, were women. Only 5% nominations. So in 2019, she started a program to actually connecting with her networks, was really advocating to encouraging women in the organic chemistry community to consider being nominated for prizes. And that, only after 2 years, had a significant impact. We observe an increase of 25% of women nominated for organic chemistry prizes within the RSC. And this has expanded into other areas. This really not only in organic chemistry, it has gone now into other areas. And today, I have to say, in 2022, I'm not sure what happens in last year, I don't have the data, but in 2022 was observed that 40% of the winners are women. So it's a fantastic action. And this is important because what we are doing is engaging with the community to drive change. But of course, when we talk about women, women are not only women. We have to think about the intersectional approaches to that, the compounding effect, whether that woman is a member of the LGBT plus community, whether that member is a Black or minoritized ethnic group, or whether that woman is a disabled chemist. And I have to say that we know through the work that we have done, these are 2 reports on LGBT plus, on race and ethnicity impact, that the exclusionary feelings are more pronounced for LGBT plus women than for LGBT plus men, that the loss of women is much more pronounced for people who identify themselves as Black compared to white ethnicities or to Asian ethnicities. So that's a quite important thing to keep in mind. And this is something that we are continuing to be working on. I just wanted to say a little bit about disability because it's a big, large piece of work that we are undertaking at the moment. And what we know through our membership surveys in 2022 and in 2024, which is we do a survey of the 60,000 members every 2 years, we know that women tend to disclose their disability much more than men. And that's the percentage that is there. And we know that female disabled undergraduates are overrepresented compared to men. But we also know that at senior levels, female and disabled are underrepresented. So the loss of disability is huge. It's much more complex than I have said. I just want to mention this is something that we are working on at the moment. And before the end of the year, we have a big report about disability and accessibility in labs and the impact on women in particular. I put 2 other figures I should explain briefly. The first one is an organic chemist who won the prize, the RSC Inclusion and Diversity Prize 2 years. She's from the United States. And she developed a new sign language for organic chemists. And it has had a huge impact, and it was something very impressive to see what she has achieved. And the second one is a student from Ireland who actually is blind and is to attend meetings with a dog, with her assistant dogs, and she has a fantastic, I strongly recommend for you to read that article that she wrote in Chemistry World. Very emotional, very interesting to see how a little thing can make a huge difference to many. The other area that I want, and I have a few slides only just now, one is about the pay and reward survey that we do every 2 years. And in 2023, this is the result of the last survey. And this is a survey that was responded, this international survey. We have over 5,000 respondents in this survey, so it's quite significant, the number of responses. And as you can see here, women earn around 21% less than men due to the lack of representation at higher positions in leadership and senior leadership, wherever they are, academia, industry, this is mainly industry, but wherever they are. That women hold 15% of the board positions seats and 20% of the leadership positions in the chemical industry, only today, 2023. And that women of color, and again, the compounding effect of intersectional identities, the women of color and LGBT plus women, their representation is much lower at senior positions in the chemical industry, as you can see there. Also, we learned a little bit about the emotions that women can feel. And that was interesting, because when we talk about, in the same survey, the response from men are happy, interested, active, blah, blah, blah. Women, tired, stressed, anxious, some depressed. I mean, depression maybe is comparable in both, but the tired and stress is interesting. So where we are today in the UK, and this back again to the very first graph that I show about what is the state of academia in the UK as a comparison. UK is representative of one country, but most countries are the same. If we continue to do the same change, the same step changes that we are doing today, positive actions, positive changes, interventions, and community interventions, we will reach non-professorial and professorial level parity around 2070. Most of us will not be here to see it. The same is about the gender parity, and I just wanted to mention this because this is the World Economic Forum 2025 Global Gender Gap Report, which has appeared recently. And even though we have increased in 0.3 percentage points compared to 2024, the gender gap, look at when it's going to be achieved. So really far from the Sustainable Development Goals, gender equality, SDG 5, 2030, forget it. Really, we are so far behind. Probably 2148. So what can we do? And that involves chemists. That picture I showed, this, the previous one, the World Economic Forum, has chemists there. That's why inequalities exist. There are disciplines as well. What can we all do? First of all, work together is essential. We started with this. I mean, I think it's really important. Work with others, with other societies, with other national academies, bring together actions with the governments, with research funding agencies, with publishers, with everyone who actually can make a difference, with the community. Work together. Sponsor women. We talk about mentoring, endless. It's very important. But sponsoring, crossing the street to make a difference is so important. Sponsor women. Every time you have to think about someone to nominations for prizes, nominate women scientists, nominate someone who actually think about women, nominating women. If you have to think about someone who, a conference, think twice, not the first person that comes after, who probably is a man, think twice, and then may you find women that actually could be presenting and being a plenary speaker at a conference. Be an ally. Be an ally of women. And act as a role model, and this is in particular for women. We need to be proud of ourselves, of what our achievements, and talk about those. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention.